I think it provides a really good opportunity to be a space that's not only super professional for us to continue to network, but also to be a little bit, a little more personal, a little more vulnerable in a space that not only do we share with each other, but also we share with some of my young students. I think it's important for coaches to share what's personal, again, because I want my students to know that I'm really living what I'm saying when I talk to them for an hour throughout the day. I want to say something to this young man or woman that's going to help them see that there's something bigger than the moment that they're in, or there's some greater lesson that we can teach. And for one reason or another, sometimes I struggle to do that. If all we stress from a young age is you're good at a sport, you play a sport, that's who you are, when that's either taken away or just the time runs out, those young people are going to really have challenges in front of them. If the kids keep showing up, I feel confident enough in our school setting, in our team setting, in the kids that have come before them and the kids that are going to help them continue to develop, that they're going to see progress. So it's all about just building that young man or woman up, and keeping them coming and keeping them attending.
Welcome to this new episode. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor for the podcast, Moxy Monitor. If you've been following my work, you know that the Moxy is a tool that I use a lot for testing, but also for everyday training and coaching. For those who don't know about the Moxy Monitor yet, it's a NIRS device that measures muscle oxygen saturation and blood volume in real time. It's a non-invasive sensor that is placed on the skin and can be worn during any training or sporting activity. Motocross riders and climbers wear it on their forearms. Hockey players on the ice, swimmers can wear it in water. I've used it to test rugby players, CrossFit athletes, endurance athletes, and more. The Moxy allows you to individualize work and rest periods, optimize load, reps and sets, identify training thresholds in real time, and even correct movement based on what the data shows you. You can also use the Moxy Monitor to determine an athlete's energetic limiting factor and their individual training zones. Using this process, I can now target the athlete's limiter with precision in order to improve their performance without adding unnecessary volume to their program. You can view and collect the data on your Garmin watch, and can also pair the Moxy with other physiological testing products such as the VO2 Master, Pnoe, and Cosmed VO2 systems. The Moxy is a product I've been using for many months with great success, and I highly recommend it to any coach who's interested in digging a little bit deeper on the physiological side of health, fitness, or performance. You can use the coupon UPSIDE at checkout for a 5% discount on moxymonitor.com/shop. That's UPSIDE, UPSIDE, for a 5% discount. With that said, let's get into the show. All right, John, we're live on the podcast. How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing great. I'm glad we were able to link up and connect. And even if it took a couple tries, it's going to be well worth it. I'm excited to be on. I appreciate you having me, man.
No, it's definitely my pleasure. For the 2.5 listeners who don't know who you are, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
I don't know about that, man. Let's see. So I am at North Broward Preparatory School, which is in South Florida, Coconut Creek to be exact. Broward County, that's the Fort Lauderdale is there. We're probably about an hour north of Miami, if anybody's not really familiar with the state of Florida. It is a pre-K through 12 prep school. The majority of the student population that I work with is grade 6 through 12. In a wide range of things, in addition to being the director of athletic development on campus for mostly our high school students, although that has kind of grown to our middle school students, where I am involved in the physical education curriculum for our middle school students throughout the school day. And that is our personal fitness class, which is basically an intro to strength and conditioning. Quite a bit different from what our high schoolers are doing. But again, it's kind of a nice intro for them if they go on and continue as student athletes for us. So typically our students, the reason I have a break in the day, I told you off air a little bit, but typically I'll have our high school students before and after school and then our middle school students are the ones that typically I see throughout the school day. So in addition to those responsibilities, there are also some athletic department responsibilities on campus, but the largest one is also being the school's head track and field coach. And, kind of the the area that I don't want to say the area I focus on, because I like to think that I pay attention to all of our events, but the sprints has been something that has kind of been a seamless transition. I've been the strength coach at North Broward for 8 years and the track coach for 4 of them. So that was a position. Initially, we said that I wasn't going to coach any sports. And then our track coach, who was doing a great job, had retired. And it just made a lot of sense. It was easy. You know, I look at track in general, especially training and programming for track, as just that, training. So largely for a lot of our multi-sport athletes, or our athletes that weren't initially multi-sport and were training with me at that time of year, now surprise, they're coming out to the track and they're competing in something there. And then similarly, some of the track and field athletes that were not necessarily intentionally avoiding me in the weight room, but they were missing out on some of our training through that time. Just based off scheduling. I told you, you can imagine how tough it is to get kids in only before or after school. Then if another coach is designing a practice plan, it's hard to work that in, understandably so. So, so those two worlds kind of merged at that time. And ever since, that's kind of where I've been. It's, 8 years now. And the high school level in the United States is incredible, especially from a strength conditioning standpoint, track and field as well. But I just think, that it's such a great place to be in our current setting as an industry, to have some security and just have some freedom. Might not necessarily be the word, although there is a lot of freedom, but it's just it's a very enjoyable position. It's a very enjoyable student population that I'm able to work with. And then also on top of that, I'm able to work with some young people in the community in different areas, as well as, different clientele that might be everything from young kids to professional athletes. And that's something that's kind of a rarity if you're associated with the program nationwide. So very great place to be, great position to be in. I'm grateful to be there and lucky to be there.
Is that a position that you've always aimed towards? Is it something you knew you wanted to do?
Actually, no, I didn't. I was at Rutgers University in 2014 as a graduate intern. And I thought, like many young coaches here, I thought, Division I athletics, college athletics was where I wanted to be. And I thought that I was on the trajectory to do that by fulfilling kind of those checkpoints that you go through as a young coach. And then I'm from South Florida originally. That's something that's extremely meaningful to me. If anybody knows me, knows that it really matters to me. And I kind of always wanted to come back to South Florida for a variety of reasons. And knowing that, I had known that there was going to be slim pickings in terms of if I wanted to be a collegiate strength coach, where that would be. And so, that kind of, that was just an understanding for me early on. And then as I was working at Rutgers, I got a call from who is still our basketball coach and close friend of mine. At that time, I was really close friends with his brother. I still am, but now I work with our basketball coach on a daily basis. We're much closer than we were at that point. But he had just called me and let me know of a position that was opening up. It actually is it's the school campus that's closest to the house that I grew up in. I didn't go to North Broward, but it's pretty cool to be like, I'm literally like a stone's throw from the house that I grew up in. And he called me and told me about the job. And I knew nothing about the high school level from a strength and conditioning standpoint. Obviously at that point I'd been through high school and I had a great strength and conditioning coach, but I didn't really think it was a career possibility. Most of the people that I read up on and looked up to in our field were largely at the college level. So I didn't know some of the best coaches I know today that are at the high school level. I didn't even know that existed at that time. So I fielded that call and then eventually ended up speaking with who is still my AD. And we had a really good conversation about what was going to be able to transpire at North Broward. And, I just didn't expect that, to be honest. Again, it was a school that was close to me growing up. So it wasn't necessarily something I was like, that's really something that's going to happen at North Broward. That's incredible. And then really after speaking with the AD in person, it was really like, we were really lucky to catch each other at the right time. And after the conversation in person, I was like, this is 100% what I want to do. And again, that's 8 years ago now, and haven't looked back since, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, sounds like you really found the perfect position for the skills you had developed up until now, and it also sounds like you've really developed yourself throughout this time span in that school. So it sounds like obviously you spoke of your friend who introduced you to, or who let you know that this position was becoming available. Was that just kind of maybe a bit of luck, or is the network that you have around you, network of coaches, people you communicate with, is that something you've worked on over time as an asset in the industry?
Yeah. So, and I appreciate those kind words. The anybody that knows me knows I don't know if I want to use the word like super active on social media, but I really like to use social media as a vessel to develop, not just in our field, but also develop relationships with our kids. I think social media provides a really good, I've spoken on social media for hours. I think it provides a really good opportunity to be a space that's not only super professional for us to continue to network, but also to be a little bit a little more personal, a little more vulnerable in a space that not only do we share with each other, but also we share with some of my young students. Some of my students will see my social media activity. So not only is it necessary now to handle that responsibly, not just for our profession and for those students, but at the time I had shared some information and at that time I was basically just like sharing exercises and kind of day to day that was going on either when I was at the University of North Texas before Rutgers or at Rutgers. And that was largely where it came from, and probably all of my connections to this day, both in our field, really mostly in our field, but have come at one point or another from Instagram, it seems like. So I was sharing some things on Instagram. Our basketball coach's name is Casey, and his brother is Colby. Colby was, like I said, real good friend of mine through high school, still is today. And I think Colby said, "Hey, Case, here's Coach Garrish's Instagram. Maybe you should bring him up as that strength and conditioning coach." And I think that's how it started, if I recall correctly. But really, yeah, I mean, 100% social media is super important to me. It's something that I think is necessary for us as coaches to not invade our clients or students' space, but be in their space a little bit and kind of show them how, especially in my instance, talking about from maybe 12 years old to 17 years old, how to hopefully really handle yourself as a responsible adult, I think is something that can happen there on a more, day-to-day time scale versus just the 1 hour that we see them on campus, or in the weight room. I'll see them more than that, of course, throughout the day, but so yeah, that's kind of it. Frankly, the position could have opened up anywhere. It just happened that it was at home, and it just happened that Coach Casey had just gotten the job, and it was really good timing and really good. It was perfect how it worked out. And again, I haven't looked back, man.
As someone who has been able to leverage social media in a positive way throughout your career, how has your communication, let's say, style evolved over time? And maybe if you had a couple pieces of advice for, maybe young coaches who want to do the right thing on social media, want to communicate effectively, but don't really know how.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you have to think of it's chess, it's not checkers, right? So ultimately, you have to think about what your audience is, and really, it's when you're in a position. If you're seeking a position, that might be different than being in a position. I still think, no matter what, I look at social media, I look at my Instagram, my Twitter account as my living, breathing resume. And it's up to date at all times because everyone, anyone has the opportunity and ability to be able to see what we post and share. If it's public, of course, but probably people will figure out a way to see it anyway. So if you're a young coach, know that your audience, pretend that your audience is whoever that decision maker is going to be that's going to hire you for a position. Now it goes two ways. So you certainly want to share what you know, and kind of where you are. But also for a young coach, you also have to understand that it's something that you want to be cautious of. You don't want to come off as too know-it-all-y, and that's for lack of a better term. But you don't want to, because you don't want to kind of upset a veteran coach in that way, because it's understandable that a veteran coach could be like, well, what have you done? So showing hunger and eagerness to learn, and also still throwing in kind of a little dash or a little thread of what you know and where you are, I think is necessary at all times. And then when you are in a position, again, understanding who your audience is. So knowing that the bulk of my professional audience, yes, in our network, but also understanding that a lot of them are teachers on campus, my coworkers and colleagues, some of my athletic department bosses and people that I work with closely on a day-to-day basis. And then from a student standpoint, okay, students, but also for every student, many in the household have two parents that look at my social media usage too, which is, again, this is not just speaking on behalf of myself, it's for other coaches that are in a high school or a school setting or any setting, frankly. And then also understanding, again, whatever's happening off campus too, and knowing that there might be a clientele off campus, there might be a group of young people or population that I'm working with off campus, whatever it may be, just understanding that all of that is sort of your audience. And then of course you also have whoever's involved in your personal life and private life. So knowing that, yes, I've said this numerous times, like if you feel the need that there's a way to share what's personal without sharing what's private, if that makes sense. And I think that's important to understand. If you have a public social media presence, understanding that you can share what's personal. I think it's important for coaches to share what's personal, again, because I want my students to know that I'm really living what I'm saying when I talk to them for an hour throughout the day, but also, if you want to share, if it's really important to you to share a picture at the beach, drinking a beer with your wife, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it just might not be something that's necessary for your students to see, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I divide public or personal versus private. It's okay to get personal, but sharing things that are super private, I don't know that is, necessarily something that's going to be of benefit to I'm more so thinking, to be honest with you, now in my social media usage, I'm more so thinking about our kids and our students than I am about, I love our network, I love our profession, but it's just become more that. And maybe it's mostly because I don't feel like I'm looking for a job, you know what I mean? I feel very comfortable and confident in where I am. That might be a big reason for it. But really trying to connect better with our kids and parents and everybody on campus, and the things that we have going on here. That's kind of how I've shifted social media wise.
As a result of you being so active on, like you mentioned, Instagram, Twitter, do you have some of those conversations with the kids that you work with? Do you guys talk about communication, social media, how to use it, how not to use it?
Yeah, of course. So not only it's something that I discuss with our students on a daily basis. Certainly, we have a little more. I wouldn't necessarily say formal, but I have a little more formal presentation for them once a year. And the same thing would go to all of our coaches. Again, that's kind of where being a member of the athletic department gives me the opportunity to. They understand, our coaches understand first and foremost. I want them to understand that I'm a colleague. I'm not someone that's like above them, and it helps that I'm the track coach now, because now we kind of are all on that level of coaching a sport on campus. But so for our coaches, but certainly for our students, and again, it's a conversation can help, but if they see me handling social media in a different way, if they see things going counter to what I've told or requested of them, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter what you say, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. So yeah, certainly, I mean, day to day, but also we have a little more formal education, and also in the classroom, we have a personal branding class, which I think is the most important class that our students could take.
Oh, can you talk a little bit more about that one?
Yeah, so it's not taught by me. It's just we encourage all of our students. All of our students are going to have a voice and a face on social media. Specifically, Twitter is what I've noticed, and that's also carried into our entrepreneurial studies
Mhm.
class. So it's understanding, again, this is our world. This is the direction that we're going. There's in our field, our profession, I understand the selflessness that is necessary to to perform really well in our profession. I think there is a degree of selflessness that is necessary. It's the same. The more I work in an educational setting, and I think every performance coach is educating, the coaches in the college ranks, the coaches even in the professional ranks, it's still education. But being truly embedded with our teachers, with our faculty, with our staff on a daily basis, and truly understanding that it's an educational setting that we're in,
Mhm.
versus just thinking sports and thinking performance in that sport, has been extremely helpful. So seeing that, again, that's just something that they're required to take. It's something that I think has been extremely beneficial for them. And so anyway, I'm sorry, I knew I got off track, but the selflessness is necessary. But there is a certain, just like I said, it's your resume. Nobody takes, nobody like, nobody's humble on their resume. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't mean that in a negative term. I mean, yes, you're still a humble person. Like, there's many people that are humble, but you're not going to like leave out details or like hide things that are positive in your resume. And that's not to say that all you want to do on Twitter is to make yourself sound and look good. But at the same time, it is an opportunity to put yourself in front of people that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have. So if that social media usage is not happening, that's the number one flaw you can have. But if it
Mhm.
is happening, and you're not understanding that social media usage as your brand, or as, like I said, my resume, that I think is flawed as well. So it's something that it's necessary for our students to see and hear. And I think it's been something that's been extremely beneficial to them as well. Just seeing them, how they now have matured and graduated from high school, graduated even from college, and seeing how some of them I'm still connected with that are doing really incredible things, and they're sharing them. And I think that's necessary.
Mhm. Yeah, you've shared a lot of positive aspects of social media, and I concur with you. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to, like you said, connect with people you might not be able to connect with otherwise, and show your work, explain of some reasons of why you do things, so people can maybe gain a deeper understanding into your work, and appreciation for everything that goes in and comes out of it. That being said, what do you think are the limitations of social media currently, and what can be done to not necessarily address those directly, but maybe, for example, in what cases should you not communicate about something online and you should maybe go talk to someone in person? What cases require us to maybe move away from social media simply because of what it conveys or what it doesn't convey?
In a professional,
Whether it's on the professional and personal level, we talked about a little bit of both. Your professional
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so with our, like I said, it's chess. You got to always think about, like, for us, we always have to think with our students, with our parents, with our teachers, colleagues, no matter what, in a more kind of in our bubble, so to speak, in my bubble of campus. I have to think of, ultimately, really, and this is how I've learned this from numerous high school strength coaches. We have to think about what is this, and it sounds like I'm just going from 0 to 10 real quick, but what is this interaction going to sound like to a jury? What is this interaction going to sound like to a judge? What is this interaction going to sound like to that kid's parents? So if there's any question at all, doesn't matter what it is. I say, like, if the sun is down, stop communication. If, like, there's so many things with students that we just have to be really cautious of. And again, I think it's necessary to have students involved and be a part of a community with students on social media. But personal messages, maybe there's a better way to do it. Constantly viewing what your students are doing, also another thing that you got to be really cautious of, because especially today, students can see, parents can see when you view what they posted. So why are you watching every single thing that they post? That might be something that'll come into question. So again, it's just thinking from that standpoint of like what could be the worst possible way that this interaction can be received.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything at all that can come from it, then you ought to be cautious. If it's, again, our students are encouraged, they sign papers that basically say that teachers, staff, the school is going to share what they do on social media. So that's something that our school wants us to do. So our students are going to be shared unless they really request of me. I'm not going to say, well, you signed a paper that said that. If they say that they don't want to be shared, no problem. But again, that's something that we already we see eye to eye, and the students and parents understand that that's going to be something that we do. So that's, again, as long as you're not, okay, we can also be cautious about if really it doesn't matter who it is. If a student's doing an RDL, is that something that we need to, if we're really working a hinge pattern, maybe be cautious of the angle and cautious of, again, the optics of what it looks like we're really doing there. So just being really cautious there. And then from a professional network standpoint, I think I see what everybody sees. I'll be honest with you, if you saw my usage on Twitter, probably from like 2016 to 2019 to now, I have like completely dropped off because it's tough, and I hate to say it, and I hate to, because the one thing that I try to always say, like, don't blame a platform for it. Try to find a way. But honestly, I just got to a point where I felt like no matter what I shared on Twitter, it could be as positive as possible. Somebody's going to have something to say, and that's our world. I get it. But so with that, like, I always try to, even if I see someone doing something that I don't necessarily agree with, I, so to speak, bite my tongue, or find a way. What we've gotten so comfortable with social media usage, which is good, but the days of phone calls are now gone, or, you know, the days of even text messaging have seemed to have gone that it's really easy to see somebody post something that you don't like or don't agree with and respond to it and say, I would do it this way, or you're, you know, and there's a lot of that. I don't know if I have the exact answer on it. Try to be more positive and understand that people's situation is going to be different. And I've learned, like, since I started, the things that either I'm using now or the people, like, perfect example, like there's a specific group of coaches in the South Florida area that if I still looked at their training, maybe I wouldn't necessarily agree with, but I got to know them as human beings and see how they interact with their athletes. And quite frankly, I've never seen a more impressive coaching environment. Now, again, maybe the training methodologies and modalities aren't necessarily what I would agree with, and that's what you see on social media. But there's a reason why kids come in droves and they want to be coached by a certain person. Like there's a reason for that. So understanding that there's numerous ways to accomplish a goal. Again, even if it's not necessarily the way that we would do it, even if it's not necessarily the way that a book tells us to do it, there's a lot of ways to accomplish a goal. And you know, again, that's kind of something that I think that's a limitation of social media. We only see the surface instead of really seeing what's happening in a session or you know, even deeper a relationship with whoever those athletes are.
No, and I appreciate you going into great detail on that topic. I think it's good to have someone like you who's very well versed in the mean of social media and the use of social media, but also, you know, seeing both sides, knowing when it's a good idea, knowing when it's not a good idea, having a good, you know, plus column and minus column, and knowing how to play on both sides. So I appreciate you go detailing your perspective on it. Now, if we transition to the role that you play in the program that you're at, so you work with a lot of different age groups, a lot of different sports as well. You have a lot of influence on a lot of students, a lot of athletes. What values do you ground yourself in? And what values do you try to communicate to the students and the athletes that you work with on a day-to-day basis in order to have maybe the best impact possible that you can have, not only right now, but also communicate values that hopefully they can take with them along their personal, athletic, or professional career?
Sure. Yeah, I I think one of the big things, and it's been a big point, and maybe it's now because I've been able to be in the position that I have seen people graduate from middle school, people graduate from high school, and now even people graduate from college. And also just learning from other coaches and understanding that you're going to accomplish a lot more when you understand that you have that much time than you are when you're trying to accomplish something in a single day. Now that extends way deeper than just some sort of training method. Yes, 100%. You're gonna do more harm than good in a single day, and you're gonna do more good than harm, obviously, ideally in an extended period of time. But the same goes for just the values that are necessary to be shared. I think Fred Eves is a coach that I really look up to, who's in the Nashville area, and I've looked up to him. He's one of those people that I didn't even know existed when I was like seeking college, and now he's one of the people that just an incredible human being and person I look up to. And at that time that I asked him, like, I kind of was having issues finding my way with that. At that time, I was probably 24 or 25, and it was like, how do I want to teach these 16, 17-year-old young men or women, but in this instance, I was talking about the young men on campus. I want to teach them a lesson, and I want to say the right things, but I don't know what to say sometimes. And he seemed like somebody that was always really good with his words. And I was like, I've been with coaches, and some of the coaches that I worked with and some of my mentors are some of the people that were like the most impressive people with their words. And I don't know that that's necessarily my strength, to be honest with you. It goes with coaching cues, and it also goes with like just saying what I want to say, to be honest. That's personal life. That's also professional. And with our kids, like there's times that I'm like, I want to say something to this young man or woman that's going to help them see that there's something bigger than the moment that they're in, or there's some greater lesson that we can teach. And for one reason or another, sometimes I struggle to do that. That's being completely vulnerable and candid with you. But what he said to me really resonated, and it still resonated to this day. And it also really kind of bleeds into the social media usage, was that he said something to the effect of, they're 16, 17, and you're 23 and 24. And he said some really nice things about me at that time that almost made me tear up. But frankly, that they're going to see that you're just, and I still consider myself a youngish coach. I'm one of the younger staff members on campus. They're going to see that somebody that's just a step or two ahead of them is handling things responsibly and portraying those values that I want to portray in itself. They're going to see that on a daily basis in how I show up to work and how I leave work. They're going to see that on a daily basis in how social media usage, again, has become a big part. And they're also going to see, and that's another reason why I think we fear too much to let our students in on those things that are personal. And again, that doesn't mean, I know there's so many nightmares. I have teachers that I had when I was younger that like let us know way too much personal stuff. And that's not what I mean. I just mean that like they know that what I say when I'm closing out a session and telling them to handle their business appropriately on the weekend, that I'm also doing the same thing. And again, that's not to put myself on a pedestal. That's to say that that's what I want to portray on social media, and that's what I want them to see, whether it's on campus, the way I'm walking around campus, or how I interact on whatever time of day or weekend it might be through social media. That's kind of how I've tried to portray some of those values, and that's what's become a greater success, I think, even than, saying this is how we want to do things and these are the values necessary. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think it's a good lesson maybe for other coaches who might also not be, from their perspective, the best at crafting pretty sentences and a nice speech, or something that can, like really get the point across. But like you said, if you can just embody those values yourself and live them day to day and really just lead by example, then that's going to be enough to communicate, and you don't need to have all the right words at the right time.
Sure. 100%.
What would you say the biggest lessons were that you've learned over the course of those 8 years working in this program, slowly getting involved in more and more sports and different aspects of the life of the program. What are the biggest things that you've learned?
Well, I had mentioned kind of understanding the patience and consistency necessary to really make a lasting impact. There's been numerous students that, at the time, if you had asked me, I had felt like I was, quote unquote, making a big impact and felt like we had a really good, relationship and connection. Again, speaking on behalf of coach, teacher, and student. And then eventually they graduate and it's like, yeah, I don't know that we really had that impact that I thought we did. They make some decisions. So number one, understanding, like, I was speaking to our staff early on in the year. We had a kind of intro meeting, and I hate using the term "you can't save everybody" because our students, especially, like, they're outstanding kids. Most of them come from great families. It's a private school that their parents work really hard for them to go to. And so I don't mean you can't save everybody, but sometimes there's that person that you can't relate to, and it's really hard to, not necessarily can't relate to. I think you can find something with everybody, but you're not going to really get to a level that you're making that huge impact. And that's okay. You can still be a person that's kind of a, background player in their life, and maybe it's another person on campus that they'll relate to more, and referring them to that person is much more important, and it'll be much more beneficial to them. So, and then contrarily, there's other students that it's like, I feel as though we don't have a tremendous relationship and I'm not making much of an impact, and they'll come back a few years later and say the complete opposite, which is of course a really nice thing, in retrospect. Unfortunate in the moment, like you wish you knew that at the time, but also, again, maybe if it's something that you knew, you force, some of those things. Like I said, I can force words and not do my best with that. So sometimes it's just something that even a student that you don't really know on campus, that might come to play. So, I mean, that was a big thing. And then another big thing that I always stress to our students, and stress to any young coaches, but also coaches that are either at my level or far more experienced and better versed than I am. It's understanding that this is simply sports. Coaching is simply what we do. And for the bulk of us, for all of us, really, it's probably momentary. And even if you're doing it for 50 years, it's still momentary. It's not the thing that you're doing your entire life. It's not your entire purpose of being. It is a large play into the purpose of being, but it's not our sole reason. So understanding for our students that, I try to use the word athlete as little as possible. I try to use the words football player, basketball player as little as possible, because I want them to understand that, number one, they're bigger than that, and there's things that are way bigger than that. And I think the reason why that's necessary is, I think students, I think young people, this was a real challenge for me, career transition. Like, that becomes really tough if all we stress from a young age is you're good at a sport, you play a sport, that's who you are. When that's either taken away or just the time runs out, those young people are going to really have challenges in front of them. And they're very unfortunate. So for me, if I can be the voice that helps them understand, and it's probably the voice that they least expect, being their performance coach, that my goal on campus is supposed to be to help them become a better football player, baseball player, basketball player, soccer player, whatever it may be. Hearing from me that there's something way bigger out there, there's things that are way more important out there. It's a little bit easier in the academic setting because we can talk about grades, and we can talk about future, and we can talk about parents and family and future family goals and plans, things like that I think are stretch far beyond what happens in the weight room or on the track or on the field. Those have been the things that have really resonated with me and stuck with me in this time.
Yeah, like you said, it might sound unusual for a performance coach to be stressing the importance of not only thinking of yourself as the person who plays the sport. Do you feel like that's maybe something you could see yourself doing down the line when it comes to helping people find their way as a person in the world? Is that, like, I guess the word coach just comes to mind. Like you said, you're a coach in an athletic setting right now, but do you feel like maybe you're on a broader scale, do you feel like coach just corresponds to who you are as a person and what you want to convey to not only the kids that you work with, but people in the world in general?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think you're right on that. I think, quite frankly, I think my greatest opportunity to be able to stress the importance of that is being in the position that I'm in right now. I mean, I think a lot of us performance coaches, especially at the high school level, you go basically climbing the ranks would be then going, either athletic director or some other administrative role. I don't have aspirations for that necessarily now, because I like the ins and outs. I like interacting with the students on a daily basis versus, being a little more global, I suppose. And that's not to knock anyone in administration. They're the ones that make it happen for us and give us coaches the opportunity and ability to do that. So there's a chance at one point, maybe that, or something like you said, maybe a little more global, but I feel like I have a great opportunity to do that with our students on a daily basis. And that's, that really matters to me. And that's definitely check that box, so to speak, of what I want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I want to talk about speed training a little bit, because I know you're quite fond of that activity.
Of course.
What is it that you love about speed training?
Once again, I know I might be speaking with people that aren't from South Florida, but South Florida is speed. And like, you grow up here, like that is really what, if I'm sure it's like it in other places, but South Florida is known for its speed. You grow up foot racing, you grow up, if you're not a faster person on campus, like, who are you, so to speak? And I don't mean that in such a negative connotation, but that's kind of what I thought growing up. So that still kind of has a big, that's kind of the lens that I see through still. That was just growing up. It was something that I wasn't very fast growing up. And as I developed, I felt like I got faster relative to my peers. And, so maybe it started there, but then from there, I mentioned kind of when the track position came open, and that was like, there was a discussion to be had. It wasn't much of a decision, because our defensive coordinator, also just like our rock star on campus, the best human being on our campus, is our defensive coordinator. And he was already the throws coach. So I was a hammer thrower in college. We don't throw hammer down here. I threw some shot put. Probably could have coached the shot putters. I never succeeded in discus. We now have javelin. We didn't at the time. I threw javelin as well for like a year. I hated it because I was so bad at it. So throws was like, well, we wanted and I know I'm kind of getting off track, but I'll get back to the point that
no problem.
We wanted our football guys to continue to be a part of our team. We want all of our sport athletes, no matter what, and non-athletes, so to speak, kids that aren't in sports yet, to be a part of our program. I like to cast a wide net. I want as many kids out there as possible. I knew that he, number one, was going to relate to the kids, is a really good coach, and also was going to have the football players out there, which make the bulk of our throwing population, at least on the boys' side. So it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to take over an event, which event is that going to be? And even through my career transition, or, kind of just career progression, speed was something that was really meaningful to me. Using speed as a means of becoming a better athlete, regardless of sport, was something that was important to me. And also, it was the easiest kind of like mix and match, although it wasn't much mixing and matching. It was of the training and of our multi-sport athletes. So like, kids were like hesitant to long jump and triple jump at first, but hey, I'll come out and sprint. I'm not going to hurdle, I'm not going to run long distances, but hey, I'll run the 100-meter dash. It sounds fun. So that was an easy way to get a lot of our students involved. Again, it was an easy way for me to kind of control, especially at that time. I didn't have the foggiest idea of how to build a track program and how to program for a track season. So it was really easy to think, okay, well, we're just doing a speed day, and whatever we were going to line it up with in the weight room. So that also then, okay, I started working with our student population as sprinters, and that became something that really became meaningful to me and helping us develop on campus. that again, that was just, and then that just kind of grew from there. It continued to develop not only my love for sprinting, but also just kind of the culture on campus as well. That was where it started.
Yeah. So you said you're lucky enough to work with some fairly young kids as well as part of the general program. And so when you have the chance to work with those 6, 7-year-olds, are you already thinking about speed in that context with those young kids? And if so, what type of exercises might you bring that maybe it won't be speed focused exercises, but that will have a good carryover if and when they transition to working with you on the track one day? What can serve them better at that moment?
Yeah, I think one of the things for like a person that young, I mean, I just take it back. I take it back kind of the PE, and I think unfortunately the way that our society has gone, physical education, and we have a fantastic PE teacher on campus. He's the man, and does a really good job. As far as I see, he's the expert in that realm, and I'm just able to sit back and watch what he does and learn from him. For some of those that miss out on a really high quality physical education curriculum, I think a lot of those things that are missed, the skips, the hops, gallops, introduction to bounding, which I think can happen still at that age, even if it's not as extreme as maybe would happen with some of our higher level athletes, I think is really necessary for those young people. Far less emphasis on some of our speed drills or, some ideas of what their max velocity is, because that's just going to change tomorrow because they turn 7 years old and they're not 6 anymore. So some of those things, I still think it's necessary to kind of culminate a culture of speed, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And, to understand that, they see, so if I have like a large group session that it's like some of my free sessions that I'll have everyone from post-collegiate sprinters to like legitimately I've had a 4-year-old there. Like the 4-year-old is obviously not going to understand what I want them to accomplish in a drum drill, and they're not going to run over wickets, but sometimes going through some of those general drills that we start with, just seeing a 4-year-old like look around, or a 6, 7-year-old is probably more appropriate. Probably 8 and 9 is probably even better. But see them look around and kind of like model behavior and model movements off of some of the higher level or just more experienced young people is a benefit in itself, I think. So I don't look at that as like missed time or advancing a progression too soon. I'm not instructing a kid on what their foot placement's going to be. I'm instructing them more so on the coordination of switching legs and hopping and doing things like that. So some of those, like I still let some of those drills go in our large group session. Whereas if I'm working with a kid individually, number one, that young, I don't know if is necessary to be from the start, but if I have a group of young kids like that, maybe they play some sort of club sport or something like that, or, play for a city league and the team wants me to train. I mean, I feel like we can accomplish a whole lot on skips, gallops, hops with different intensities, different vectors, and different volumes. I think is something that we can benefit and be of benefit for kids that young.
Mm-hmm. When you're coaching through those different drills you talked about, skips, gallops, hops, what is your emphasis? What are maybe cues that are fairly common for you to use, or some general intentions that you like to set forward and to orient people in how they're going to execute those different exercises?
Sure. So just about all of those that I mentioned, you could skip, hop, gallop, bound. Sure, I'm missing some of our movement skills, but you can do all of those. You can do all of those nice and easy. Like I'm telling a kid to skip in the park, and off the bat, some kids struggle with that, and we all know that. We see kids that struggle with that. So if we can't skip forward and backward like we're skipping in a park, or whatever other terminology that you want to use, if the kid's unable to do that, there's no reason to alter the degree of effort or intensity of the movement. So we have to start there. It starts with the coordination of the movement. And then when we progress and we have our footing, for lack of a better term, in the coordination of the movement, that could be for all of those movements could be done for height, for distance, for speed, and also multi-directional as well. There's so many coaches that work with that younger population and again, that's not, I'm saying I would use that for athletes that are for young people that are 5 to 11 years old. I also would use that from 11 to 75. Like, that's something that's necessary for us always. Sometimes for those athletes, for those young people that are a little more advanced and they haven't skipped and they've made it to a point that they're still a high level athlete or player in their sport, but they don't know how to skip, they just get frustrated and they want to shut down. That's where the coaching really and relationship building has to come in, that it's for those more veteran athletes, helping them understand why we're doing it, because they're not going to see on Bleacher Report, or sorry to mention a news outlet's name, but they're not going to see on Instagram a high LeBron James galloping and think that's the coolest thing in the world. You know what I mean? So they don't understand the importance of those movements. So I think it's more so about if it's in that range where they're like the kind of middle to high school rebellious sort of like, and also this generation asks a lot of why questions. So, and I think that's a good thing. They want to know why they're doing things. They want to have a reason behind why they're doing it. And by the way, if you have answers to those why questions and they have a reason for doing what they're doing, they're going to try way harder. And it doesn't matter if you're skipping, crawling, or rolling on your back, they're going to benefit from it because they're going to see a purpose in what they're doing. So, so general cues, I told you, I mentioned when I'm stressing values, it also bleeds into my coaching. I think that I know that my limitation are my words. And I know that I'm not the best at cues. I know I'm not the best at, I've got 30 seconds to explain a drill. I better explain this drill in 30 seconds. I understand that. So my goal in training and programming is to find things that I can take my voice out of it. So yes, it's going to take an introduction of a gallop of first, you got to keep your right foot behind your left. And for some, it might work to say, be like a horse. For others, it probably won't. So helping them understand the movement. Then once they understand the movement, I think what's so great about some of those skills, not only the coordination that's necessary, but I think the variability and the variety of foot contacts are what make them so great and so beneficial and useful from everyone from our young athletes that are just finding their way and figuring out the rhythm and coordination of it, to our higher level athletes that are trying to run incredible times on the track or trying to do incredible things on the soccer field. That's where I think the magic in those movements are. So for some athletes, they might struggle. They might go, I mean, I've gone into detail and I'll continue to go into detail about bounding on my Instagram account. And I'm going to continue to do that. I did galloping about this time last year while we were in the pandemic. Still are, but when we were really locked down. So there's some cues, and generally that's going to come back to foot contacts. The big thing that I see with bounding is young athletes really try to make contact with the forefoot. That again, yes, if you're doing a speed bound, that might, or you're trying to stress more acceleration mechanics, that might be what's necessary there. But when you're bounding for distance, which is something that I've seen great benefit for our students, it's going to be more hindfoot or midfoot. So those are some things like, yeah, maybe, driving the knee up a little bit more, but more often than not, it's going to be like what's happening at the foot. And if I can find the words to help them understand that, that's what I'm going to do. But that's where all those progressions come in. All of our bounding progressions, all of our galloping progressions and variations are more so that the athlete can feel what I'm trying to say, or I want them to hear. I want them to be able to feel it, because that's going to resonate and that's going to last way longer than me saying whatever it may, drive your knee up, or, bring your hand up higher, or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's why I like those movements.
The word coordination comes up a lot. When you describe those different movement, different exercises as they relate to developing speed. how do you approach a student that may come to you on day one and just say, yeah, you know what, I'm just not coordinated, and tries to leave it at that? How do you approach that?
It depends. It depends on who it is. It depends what setting they're in, because I do have that kind of range of is it a student that's on a sport team on campus that they're training with their team, that maybe it's number one, like everyone has a degree of rhythm and coordination. You're not coordinated or not rhythmic. It might be, and there will be. I mean, this is true when you work at the high school level, especially with middle schoolers. Not only are you going to have the kids that never learned how to skip, so they don't know how to skip, but I mean, I've worked with everyone from kids that have been told that they're paralyzed and taught themselves to walk, to kids that have different developmental disorders and things like that make them very unique relative to who else is on their team. Even like we've got kids, everyone from, potential seniors that are going to go play football at Notre Dame to juniors, sophomores, freshmen, maybe even seniors that really they're just doing it because it's cool to be around that kid that's going to play football at Notre Dame, and they don't really know what's going on, or they just want to do it as something that's kind of improves their student experience, which is great. We love all of those kids. So it's just going to be it's going to really vary for everybody,
Mhm.
and it's hard to say that to a kid, but generally the kid, kind of how you or kind of approach that conversation, it's probably a kid that really lacks confidence, so you don't want to like knock their confidence more. Even if you say, it might hurt their confidence more saying, well, he's him and you're you, like you're two different. They might not want to hear that,
Yeah.
that's probably not. So it comes down to more so relationship building and getting to know that kid on a personal level.
Mhm.
Easy answer, right in that moment, stick with it, give it time. You have plenty of time to continue to improve at this. That young man that is going to play at Notre Dame, he didn't know how to skip when he was your age either. And that might completely be not true, but still it kind of helps, the developing a relationship there. Because those will be the kids that get frustrated and they'll reflect their frustration with you, versus like, it's not easy for us to like, that's what we do. We kind of like that's when I know when I lose my cool, it's not on the kids, it's on me. Like it's something else that's going on, and I just blow because something didn't go wrong, or something went wrong, something didn't go right. So the same thing goes for the kids. They might project on us frustration when it's just something else that's happening for them, and it certainly might have happened in the session. They might just be frustrated that they can't lunge or do whatever the movement is that we were doing. But there's such a varying degree of kids that we see that, again, that ultimately hopefully is an understanding of them, whether consciously or subconsciously. And then if it's a kid that, maybe that kid has the opportunity and availability to work one-on-one with some of the free time and comes and gets some extra work, and we work on some of the movements that they're struggling with, or if it's a private client or something like that, that's going to be something that I spend a lot more time on,
Mm.
that maybe for somebody that's already past the point that's necessary to spend a lot of time on that, we might advance to something else. I think it's we've seen great benefit from some of those movements, and it also, because if you're not coordinated in that, it's going to bear its head in other things. 1,000,000%. Some of the things that we do in the weight room, some of the things that we'll do on the baseball field, or whatever sport it may be. I keep using baseball because I saw them this morning, but it might just be something that's going to take time. And again, that goes back to the initial original thing that I said, and understanding that we do have time with some of these kids, and that's a good thing. It's more about getting that kid to be comfortable enough and confident enough to continue showing up, than it is about like giving them an answer right then and there. And that goes for everything that we do training wise, in my opinion. Speed development, strength development in the weight room. If the kids keep showing up, I feel confident enough in our school setting, in our team setting, in the kids that have come before them, and the kids that are going to help them continue to develop, that they're going to see progress. So it's all about just building that young man or woman up, and keeping them coming and keeping them attending.
You put a lot of emphasis on the relationship side of the coach students, and like you said, the contextual importance of knowing how to relate to that person in that moment, depending on all the factors that come into play. Is that something that you were lucky to learn in your education as a coach, or is that something more that you've developed on the field over the years?
Yeah, I think that's 1,000,000% something that I credit to our teachers on campus, and just being able to see how they interact with students. I've begun to approach the weight room more as a classroom than it is a facility to build a body. It's much deeper than that. So being able to interact with some of the just rock star teachers that we have on campus and seeing them, yes, do a phenomenal job of explaining their curriculum, whether it be history or whatever it may be, but more importantly, the what has come after, or what has come from their interaction on a personal level with the students. That's been way more important than who was the president in 1865, or how much can you bench press. You know what I mean? It's when you start to think like that, and you start to see these young men and women grow and have families of their own, and really become mature, responsible adults, you realize that it's way bigger. Some of the things are way bigger, and that's not to say, like, I always share that, and then I fear that, like, somehow college coaches think that I'm saying they're not making an impact, because that's actually the opposite. I think college coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, are going to make an impact that's way different than the impact that I'm going to make. Quite frankly, if Matt McGettigan wasn't my strength coach at the Air Force Academy where I started out, I don't know what type of human being I would be right now. It probably wouldn't be very good, but he made such an impact on me because I needed a person at that time. And you got kids that are leaving their parents for the first time, and trying to figure things out on their own, and there's not that high school strength coach to hold their hand anymore. They gotta figure out life on their own, and that's a real pivotal time for that young man or young woman. It's a pivotal time as well in high school and middle school. It's just, again, it's a different time. It's just a matter of what that young person needs at that time, and who is going to be there at the right time. And thankfully and luckily, I feel like I'm able to make an impact on a daily basis. But again, that can happen anywhere. Just because I've learned it from teachers, and I've seen teachers do it, and I feel, and coaches as well on campus, doesn't mean that a professional strength coach isn't going to help an athlete that is having problems at home, and could be something as bad as going through a divorce, or something with their family at home, and they're going to make every bit, if not bigger, an impact in that person's life than somebody did that just happened to catch them at a really fruitful period of their life from 14 to 18. So it can happen anywhere, but I've been lucky to be around really good people that have showed me the ropes of what can truly happen in this time period of the kids' lives.
John, I want to really thank you for taking the time to chat on the podcast today.
Of course, it's my honor.
In future weeks, months, what skills are you looking to further develop for yourself as a coach?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I wasn't expecting that one. I think even I have come to sort of the acceptance of, like I said, just my words are never my strength. Trying to still become better in that way, I think is a big piece, and that's getting. And again, that can be that can stretch everything, to be completely candid with you, in the personal life, using my words better and more, frankly, and being vulnerable with words. I think that's something that's necessary with our students in personal life, but also, again, kind of from a professional coaching standpoint, continuing to develop my ability to use words has been something that I've been working on for a while, and I'll continue to work on. Beyond that, I think it's I think that's a little bit unknown, and I think it's more so one of the things that I really like to do. Like I said, with our track program, I like to cast a wide net. And I think with network, it's the same thing. And, every now and then you cast a wide net, and you have a like with our students, cast a wide net for a program. You've got some of the kids that decide that it's not for them, some of the kids that become some of the people that you're closest with and see every day. Same thing goes kind of with the coaching network. I think social media enables us and gives us the opportunity to connect on a small level, minute level, with just about anyone we want to, even if it's just saying hello. And then you can kind of develop a relationship more closely with the people that you hit it off with, or something that they are doing really is something that has made an impact for you. So for me, I mentioned kind of the thing that I've tried to stress a little bit more is social media usage, in this bubble of our campus, but also the bubble, so to speak, of South Florida. As I've been coaching track, the more track coaches I know, the more things that I never would have thought about, now I'm thinking about. So to continue to grow in the track and field direction, as well as still the strength and conditioning direction, absolutely, that's my baby. But to continue to grow there and meet more coaches there that have opened my eyes to things that I previously wouldn't have. And they're the more kind of community members too, that has been really beneficial to me growing as a person and as a coach. So that's kind of a big point of emphasis to me, is to continue to connect with coaches more locally. Again, it's way easier than in previous eras to connect globally, which is great. But then another maybe negative of social media is we forget about the people that are in our backyard. And I don't want to do that, because there's some really, really good coaches around here. So I guess that's a point of emphasis over the next few months. And, once we get into track season, that'll start about in January for us, connecting with those coaches.
Awesome, man. John, where can people follow your adventures on social media then?
Like I said, Instagram is probably the best. I share on a daily basis on Instagram. It's Coach_Garrish, Garrish. On Twitter, I share on maybe a weekly basis, JohN_Garrish, Garrish. Those are probably the two that I share most. I mean, Facebook's kind of just for my long lost cousins and grandparents and stuff at this point, right? But yeah, Instagram's a real, that's the connection point for me. Recently, I run a North Broward Prep Strength Snapchat, if you guys want to see, but that's like hundreds of videos sometimes a day. I don't know if people want to see that. And again, it's more so for our community on campus. It's updates on what's going on campus or things like that. You can absolutely, that's MBPS_strength. But I just want to preface anyone following that with understanding that it's driven more towards the North Broward population. And don't get mad at me for like spamming with a bunch of kids and videos and like I said, just updates on campus.
Awesome, man. Well, for all the listeners and the viewers, I've linked Instagram and the Twitter, John's Instagram and Twitter in the show notes. So make sure you go follow him. John, thanks again for coming on the podcast today. It was a real pleasure to chat with you.
It's awesome. It's my honor, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Talk soon, man.
Absolutely.